The Diamondbacks are back to 500 after an 8-0 win. Brandon Pfaadt continues his turnaround. Max Kepler looks awfully close to breaking out, and the offense may finally be showing signs of life.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Diamondbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, George Lund, and today's episode is brought to you by Odoo. Great organizations win because operations matter. That's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. Now I'm coming at you a day removed from one of the Diamondbacks' most complete games of the season, an 8-0 win over the Padres to open the 4-game stretch. We've talked a lot about how this stretch will be really important for the Diamondbacks at this point in the year, coming up on the trade deadline, coming up on the All-Star break. You have to make a lot of decisions about how you're going to attack the second half of the year. I've talked a lot about personally how I think they should go towards a youth movement, and if they were going to do that, they would have to get rid of a few of their veterans, so making a lot of roster moves, potentially selling at the deadline, potentially buying at the deadline. A lot of decisions are to be made about how they're going to attack the second half of the year, especially with all the injuries that they have returning in September. Do you still feel like you can contend if you can get all those guys back? But more importantly, the Diamondbacks have been the worst team in baseball against teams above 500. Now, the Padres have sort of floated around 500 recently. They went on an 8-game losing streak as of recently before they beat the Dodgers after Craig Stammen was ejected from the game. Seemed to light a fire under the Padres. Definitely didn't light a fire under the Padres tonight as the Diamondbacks pulled off a great offensive day. Brandon Pfaadt was good. We'll talk about Brandon Pfaadt in particular. We'll talk about this offense. We'll talk about the Padres struggles, and we'll also talk about why the NL West has been grounds for the Diamondbacks to get back on track time and time again. They're tied for the third most wins against a single division in baseball right now. And it's really funny looking at those lists. It's the Dodgers, it's the White Sox, it's the Rays. It's a lot of the teams that are at the top of their division right now. But the Diamondbacks have not played well enough against teams outside of the division and then just teams above 500 in general. But to start on the game in particular, talk about what went well, what was bad for at least the Padres, maybe not the Diamondbacks, but the Diamondbacks returned to 500 at 45-45. Their fourth shutout victory of the season and first since May 11th. Big night. Like I mentioned, Brandon Pfaadt went 5 scoreless innings. Max Kepler, 2 hits, 4 RBIs, including a 3-run homer. That was hit number 3 and 4 for Kepler on the young season for him so far after an 80-game suspension for PEDs coming into this year. He's, of course, not eligible for the postseason, so the Diamondbacks are hoping they can squeeze every ounce of baseball in the regular season that they can so far, and things have been going a lot better for Max Kepler recently. Of course, the vibe around him was not great coming in. Well, this is a 700 OPS guy coming off PEDs. What really is he going to be able to give the Diamondbacks? But so far, so good. He's hitting the ball really, really hard, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But for now, of course, they can thank themselves that they got a left-handed bat that can hit right-handed pitching. That's been a struggle for the Diamondbacks, one of the worst in baseball against right-handed pitching. We'll talk about that a little bit too. But then, like I mentioned, one of their most complete games of the season. The bullpen was good. Pfaadt was good. That was my main takeaway. Brandon Pfaadt continues to turn a corner for the Diamondbacks. Of course, coming up from AAA Reno, sent down there to build himself up after he was in the bullpen for a little while, struggled in the first half of the season as a starter, as a reliever. All of it combined, just Brandon Pfaadt needed a reset down in AAA, and it looks like he's gotten that reset, and he's changed around plenty different things. He's gone away from the overhead windup. He's simplified things, take away all the extra antics and trying to do too much on the mound. He's really simplified things, and it's really started to pay off. Another great start. 5 innings pitched, 4 hits, 0 earned runs, 0 walks, and 6 strikeouts. Of course, he only gave up 1 earned run his last start against the Giants. The Padres and the Giants, maybe the 2 best teams right now to play for starts like Brandon Pfaadt needs, because he does need to get his feet under himself while he gets used to pitching in the major leagues and pitching as a starter in this league once again. But another great outing. 6 strikeouts really stands out to me. Of course, giving up 0 runs. Now, I know the Padres offense has struggled, But again, it's the things beyond just the stats, the how he's attacking hitters, the strikes, the delivery, all of it coming together to look like a different version of Brandon Pfaadt. Numbers, 75% strike rate. He talked a lot about that in his last start, that attacking the strike zone would be incredibly important for him. Zach Gallen has tried that here or there. Eduardo Rodriguez has definitely done that. And the Diamondbacks pitchers, a lot of the times, have trusted their defense, and they have a really nice defense behind them. So that's kind of been the if you're to say there's a pitching philosophy for the Diamondbacks, it's throw strikes. And with Kelly and Zach Gallen, it doesn't work because the stuff hasn't been there, but Brandon Pfaadt definitely has the stuff to make it work. 79% first pitch strike rate, 40% chase rate. That's phenomenal. 31% called strike whiff rate, and the sinker, cutter, and changeup all finished above an 80% strike rate. So when you throw 6 pitches and you can throw them all for strikes, it makes them a lot more dangerous. And that's kind of what stood out to me is when I was watching the game, they threw up this at bat in particular from Jackson Merrill. You can see him go four seam, curveball, cutter, curveball, cutter, changeup. When you're using that many different pitches throughout an at bat, and he's avoiding using sweepers to left-handed. That changeup has been great against left-handed hitters. He's thrown that pitch a lot, pounded a lot of fastballs too. But when you can use all 6 pitches that he has in his arsenal, throw them for strikes, it makes each one so much more dangerous, and they can play off of each other, and that's the most important part. Especially when all 6 pitches aren't going to be the same level or the same. You're not going to throw them all with the same amount of success, but you can play off of different pitches and use deception to your advantage. And that's clearly what Brandon Pfaadt did tonight against the Padres, just had him off balance. On 13 balls hit and play, only 4 of them were hits. 6 of them went 95 mile per hour or harder. But again, trusting your defense, that's what Erod's done all year. The fastball remains a bigger part of the plan. 33% usage rate. That's up 12 from a season average. He threw a lot of fastballs in his start versus the Giants, a lot to left-handed hitters. And again, 79% strikes. That pitch hasn't been overwhelming, but he throws them for strikes, first pitch strikes, kind of same with his sinker. And then he barely used his sweeper against the Giants. I was almost going to tweet it because I saw his start against the Phillies in the NLCS a couple of years ago. Kind of people just reflecting on that game in particular. My main takeaway from watching Brandon Pfaadt in that game was, man, that sweeper used to be so good, and he lost a lot of confidence in it early in the year. Lefties were just sort of crushing that pitch. It's always been his best whiff pitch, though, and he only threw it 2 or 3 times against the Giants, and I almost thought, well, is he going away from that pitch? Man, that's unfortunate. But, of course, the Giants were stacking lefties in that lineup in that game, and the Padres obviously have a lot more right-handed hitters to face that you're not really going to platoon for. So in this outing, he threw 11 sweepers, 2 strikeouts, 60% whiff rate. The velocity was up 0.9 miles per hour, 4 extra inches of induced vertical break, and the cutter was great too. They sort of play off of each other, going similar directions, but different velocity, different shape on those pitches in particular. It was the best called strike whiff of any pitch with 57%. So throwing that pitch a lot for strikes and getting a lot of whiff on it in particular, and 3 additional inches of horizontal break. So you're already seeing start to start, things are changing, and the break's been better, the shape's been better, velocity's gone up and down, but overall just a lot of strikes, and you see that with simplifying your windup, and he's done that. And I'm really impressed with Brandon Pfaadt so far. I mean, I know there hasn't been a whole lot of reasons to be optimistic about him in the last few years. It's been a lot of up and downs, but it was clear a change like this to go down to AAA and just figure things out. I mean, it's really hard for a starting pitcher to make too many changes in between starts. You've heard Torrey talking about a lot about it recently, that it's really hard for Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly to make any sort of large changes or any giant changes to their arsenal, their windup, anything like that, because you only have 5 days and you don't want to mess up everything, and then it's going even deeper down. So you try to make minor changes, but for Brandon Pfaadt, he was able to make bigger changes, going down to AAA and sort of hitting the reset button. And then maybe the most encouraging thing, he threw all 6 pitches at least 10% of the time, keeping hitters off balance all afternoon. So again, just really impressed with Brandon Pfaadt, and I think it's coming at a perfect time when they have all these injuries. Soroka, Nelson, you're hoping you get Soroka back after the All-Star break. Maybe you're thinking a little more optimistic about what this team is capable of. And, we'll have to see how they play this stretch. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, But if Brandon Pfaadt can be a consistent mainstay, and you don't expect him to keep pitching like this every time out, but if he can be around a league average pitcher, if he can give you, maybe a ERA in the high threes and the low fours, then you'll definitely take that, especially with how Zach Allen and Merrill Kelly have been pitching recently. But we'll go to break, and I want to talk a little bit about the offense in particular. Some signs of life, of course, a rough weekend against Milwaukee in the series loss. But again, these series against the Giants and the Padres and the Rockies continue to give us signs of life on the offense. These guys coming out of cold streaks, and we're hoping they can stay consistent and finish out the series and then take that into the next series, which they haven't been able to do consistently, but some positives still from this game in particular. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone work together towards the same goal. And that's true in sports, just like it is in business. Think about the Corbin Carroll extension a few years back. One thing that really stands out is how this organization got everyone pulling in the same direction with the decision. It wasn't just one great player or coach. It was a coordinated effort across the entire organization that made it successful. Great organizations win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. When the Diamondbacks picked up Max Kepler out of free agency, they expected a few things of him. Of course, it was met with some criticism coming off an 80-game PED suspension. He won't even be eligible to play in the postseason if the Diamondbacks were to make the postseason, but it had been that bad for them against right-handed pitching. Pavin Smith has struggled all year coming back from injury, even when he has been healthy. Carlos Santana was supposed to be the Diamondbacks first baseman. He went on the 60-day IL and was DFA'd before he could even return. The Diamondbacks have plenty of switch hitters on this team, Ketel Marte, Geraldo, Perdomo, Ildemaro, Vargas, but have all struggled a lot more against right-handed pitching than they have left-handed pitching. The Diamondbacks are one of the best teams in baseball against left-handed pitching. Corbin Carroll has some wicked splits this season. It's been really weird, but the Diamondbacks have just struggled a lot against right-handed pitching because they did not do a good enough job in the offseason to acquire a left-handed bat, a competent left-handed bat that can hit right-handed pitching. That was one of their biggest mistakes, and now they're paying for it with their record and some of their offensive cold streaks. The Diamondbacks have an 81 WRC plus, worst in Major League Baseball against right-handed pitching, 223 average, 360 slug, and a 657 OPS. They're almost equally unproductive left on right, a 215 average. So that's Pavin Smith and some of the other players on the team left on right. So any offensive boost from Max Kepler would have been huge. I was asking for a lot coming off 2 700 OPS seasons, one with the Phillies, one with the Twins. So how much you could expect of Kepler coming off an 80-day suspension or 80-game suspension PEDs, who knows? But he's been good, and he's having productive at-bats, and you're starting to see the results shine through, and I'll show you why in a second, even though the stats don't look great. But today against the Padres, 2 for 4, he had an RBI single in the first inning and a 3-run homer in the third inning. Now, this is even before his game today, but of course, a short sample size, but he is mashing the baseball. A 13.3 barrel percentage. That's about in the 80th percentile. A 46.7 hard hit percentage, which is exit velocity 95 or harder. 46.7% of his balls. That looks like that's in about the 75 percentile area. He's squaring up 28.1% of his balls. He's not whiffing a lot. His X slug is incredibly high. So clearly he's making a lot of hard contact. In that Brewers series in particular, he had a lot of hard lineouts and a lot of deep fly balls to deep parts of the park. Of course, you would like him to walk maybe a little bit more than he is, but a lot of the percentiles being in the red, especially the barrels, the hard hits, that's signs that he's coming along. And of course, the average is not showing it so far, but days like today against the Padres are examples that, if you keep hitting the ball hard, eventually they're going to find holes, they're going to find gaps, or they're just going to go over the right field wall like they did today. So the Diamondbacks would definitely welcome some life from Max Kepler, as maybe they look for another left-handed bat at the trade deadline. If they're going to trade for anything, it's definitely going to be a left-handed bat. And there was more life from the offense on the day. It wasn't just Max Kepler. It feels like they've had a few days like this, especially recently, dating back to that last Giant series at Chase Field, where it's all kind of come together from the offense in one day. Of course, they need to do it consistently against some of the better teams of baseball, but you'll still take it every time it happens. Nolan Arenado is now 6'4". His last 22, 272 average after he had one of the worst months in baseball in the month of June. He struggled after starting out the season really hot. 2 homers. He had a homer the game in the 8-0 win against the Padres. Double, 4 RBIs. He had a clutch 2 RBI double against Kyle Harrison in that Brewers series. So you're starting to see it come along a little more for Nolan Arenado. You still like to see him get going a little bit more, but if he hits 270 for the rest of the year, you'll definitely take that, and you're starting to see the power come along. That homer against the Padres was his 10th on the season. And then Geraldo Perdomo, of course, has been one of the more disappointing parts of the Diamondbacks season this year, coming off a year where he was in the MVP race last year, especially with a lot of the Diamondbacks injuries, and he was more single-handedly carrying the team with his defense, and then he just hit 20 home runs out of nowhere. But you're starting to see him come along and be that guy for the Diamondbacks once again. He had another homer on the day versus the Padres, but he's looking more like his 2025 self over the last 10 games. 324 average, 2 extra base hits, 390 on base percentage, and a 958 OPS. Of course, the key for Geraldo Perdomo is staying in those hitter-friendly counts, taking his walks when he gets them, not swinging too much out of the zone, but when he's making contact like he is right now, and that means hitting pitches out of the zone, in the zone, all over the place. When he's making contact like that and he's really locked in at the plate, that's the key for Geraldo Perdomo. The Diamondbacks don't need him to hit 20 home runs, although that would be welcomed once again. But for him to float around the 360, 370 on base percentage mark, that's where they really need him in this lineup and how it's constructed in particular. So you're seeing Ketel Marte come along once again, Geraldo Perdomo. Speaking of Ketel Marte, he's, of course, coming along as well. Seeing him heat up has been a pleasant, that's average on base percentage, slug, and OPS. He has both an 1,000 OPS over his last 7 days and over his last 14 days. So Ketel Marte has been phenomenal for the Diamondbacks too. And it's funny looking at all these recent stats of all these guys that are starting to find success for the Diamondbacks, yet their record doesn't really reflect it. Some of their offensive performances don't really reflect it. It feels like some days they have more individual star-studded days than others rather than team days. So they need to hit as a team more often. And today was an example of that. There are definitely some days like the last game against the Brewers where Perdomo has 3 hits, but it's 3 of their 7 overall hits. So coming together as a team is really important. Corbin Carroll had a double. He came in 2 for his last 21. He's really struggled recently. In particular, swinging at those high fastballs has really gotten him recently, but hopefully a sign he's beginning to break out of this sort of mini slump that he's in. Although, over the course of a season, every elite hitter, every good hitter is going to go through mini slumps, but Corbin Carroll definitely seems to be going through one of those right now, and they'd welcome more success from him as well. But definitely when you have a day where Max Kepler, Nolan Arenado, Geraldo Perdomo have offensive success, that's a great day all around. And then you add in Brandon Pfaadt, and that's a progressive day. They want to continue to have more days like that. The bullpen has been great this year, but if you could get more starting help, that really takes this team to another level. You get Michael Soroka back, and then all of a sudden, you're looking at a team. So want to transition, talk about how the NL West has really saved Arizona this season. When they've gone through all these struggles, when they've gone through these bad stretches, when they've had injuries that have brought everyone down, the NL West has been their saving grace. Now, I know I mentioned it at the beginning of the show, but the Diamondbacks are tied for the 3rd most wins against a single division in baseball. They have 17, trailing by 3, to the Dodgers. And then the White Sox are second with 18. But then you look down this list, I mean, gosh, the Dodgers are the top of the NL West. The White Sox are top of the AL Central. Braves are top the NL East. Rays, same thing. Brewers, same thing. It's funny, the Diamondbacks are one of the only outliers on this list. They've just played so well They've been so bipolar this season, and that's the thing with the Diamondbacks is what do you really make of this team? They've been so successful against the NL West, and that should be a positive because it does feel like a deep division, although some teams have underperformed certainly, but they've been one of the worst teams in baseball against teams above 500. They've been one of the best teams in baseball against left-handed pitching, but been one of the worst teams against right-handed pitching. They're either the best or they're the worst. It's frustrating the point that the Diamondbacks are in this season because it just doesn't feel like they can find a middle ground with a lot of things. If they were just average against right-handed pitching, they'd be in a much better spot. If they were just average against teams above 500, they'd be in a much better spot. If they, the rotation was just average. So I can go on and so forth about, some of the frustrations with the Diamondbacks this season, but that's definitely one of them. But certainly still a positive that they're able to get back on track against a lot of these teams. Like I mentioned before, the Diamondbacks have continued to dominate division opponents outside of the Dodgers. They now improved to 2-1 against the Padres, 5-2 against the Rockies, and 8-1 against the Giants, and they're 2-5 against the Dodgers. That 7-0 start against San Francisco marked the best start against one opponent in franchise history. They've killed the Giants all year. They were 8-0 before the Giants took the last of that series about a week ago. I'll give you a few more stats on the NL West and why the Diamondbacks have been so successful against them. But first, we'll go to break. We'll talk a little bit about some roster moves, and we'll talk a little bit more about the Padres series because they do have 3 more games to play. Have you ever noticed the second you search for something online, ads for that exact thing start following you everywhere? Or maybe you're traveling, trying to access a website, stream a game, or watch content you normally use at home, and suddenly you're hit with that message, this content isn't available in your region. That's why more and more people are turning to Proton VPN. Proton VPN is a secure VPN service designed for people who want more privacy, more security, and more control over how they experience the internet. It helps keep your online activity private, protects your data on public Wi-Fi, and gives you access to the internet the way it should work, open, secure, and on your terms. Unlike most VPNs, Proton is backed by strong European privacy laws, has a strict, independently verified no-logs policy, and is built by a company focused on protecting users, not tracking them. In baseball, we spend a lot of time talking about gaining an edge and controlling what you can control. The same idea applies online. Having the right tools can make a huge difference in your day-to-day experience. It's always frustrating when you're on the road and suddenly something you use all the time isn't available. That's one of those moments where having a tool like Proton VPN just makes life easier because you're not running into those unnecessary roadblocks. It's easy to get started right now. Proton VPN is offering our listeners 70% off a 2-year plan when you go to protonvpn.com/LockedOnMLB. That's protonvpn.com/LockedOnMLB for 70% off your 2-year plan. That's protonvpn.com/LockedOnMLB. Like I mentioned, the Diamondbacks have thrived against the NL West, particularly the Padres, the Giants, and the Rockies, particularly the Giants, especially in the win column. But overall, just looking at the statistics to not just tell you about their record, but how they played overall. And we saw it yesterday against the Padres. But overall, the Diamondbacks have a .236 average on the year, a .689 OPS, and 79 home runs. Against the NL West, 30 of those homers have come against the NL West, a .268 average and a .770 OPS. And if you remove only the Dodgers and look strictly at the Padres, Giants, and Rockies, they have a .286 average and an .818 OPS. Pitching has followed the exact same trend. Overall, team ERA 4.28, and against the NL West, 3.48. It's just been a trend for the Diamondbacks this year. The Padres, the Giants, and Rockies are teams that have struggled for large stretches of the years, and it feels like the Diamondbacks continuously catch them at just the right time. The Diamondbacks know when to turn it on against a division opponent, and it's been the saving grace for a team that's been so bad. I won't say so bad, but pretty bad against everybody else, especially teams atop of other divisions, not the NL West in particular. I want to transition, talk about some roster moves that the Diamondbacks have made recently. Some looked at positively by the fans, some not looked at so positively. Lou James Groover was optioned a few days ago. Of course, Lou James Groover has been up with the Diamondbacks for a decent amount of time now, definitely not a long time, but mostly for the entirety of June. He appeared in just 2 games after June 27th and homered on June 24th before seeing limited opportunities. So he wasn't playing a whole lot recently. I definitely understand the move. Tim Tawa was recalled, who he's had a great year in AAA, but not so much in the major leagues. Lou James Groover, of course, saw his playing time dwindle down when Pavin Smith came back. It was seen at the time when Pavin Smith did come back from injury that Lou James Groover probably wouldn't play at all, but the extended poor play of Pavin Smith led to Lou James Groover probably playing more than he thought he was going to be able to play. And of course, Carlos Santana, that whole injury saga, and they DFA'd him instead of sending Lou James Groover down. Lou James Groover definitely didn't have the best stretch of time, best offensive performance. He had about 150, but like I mentioned, June 24th, he did hit his first major league home run. It felt like in a way, maybe he was coming around the Diamondbacks number 10 overall prospect, and you needed to see those growing pains for him, and he was definitely going through them, but sent down for Tim Tawa. Definitely know a lot of people wanted Pavin to go, but I definitely understand the move, sending Lou James Groover down. He wasn't playing a whole lot anyways, and you would at least like the splits of having a lefty in Pavin Smith rather than Lou James Groover, because the Diamondbacks have struggled, like I mentioned before, against right-handed pitching. And then Adrian Del Castillo was optioned and James McCann was activated. That happened yesterday, hasn't played yet. Like to imagine he'll play his first game today, and the Diamondbacks definitely need another catcher who can give them something. Adrian Del Castillo did homer over the weekend against Brandon Woodruff, a 3-run homer that helped them in that game, helped them win that game, but overall has not been the best stretch for him offensively. James McCann certainly hasn't been much better, but you're hoping maybe he can come back and give you something. Of course, he's always been a veteran for this team. It was phenomenal last year, hoping he can get back to that point, but he struggled during his rehab assignment, 0 for 12 actually, and then before his injury, he was 12 for 59, about a 203 average. So I don't know. No, not a whole lot of reasons to believe this will make a huge impact on this game. Some pitchers do prefer certain catchers. Zach Allen was really good throwing to James McCann last year. He has not been too good this year, at least the ERA per catcher. Gabriel Moreno has blown every other Diamondbacks catcher out of the water offensively, defensively, and then just how pitchers have thrown to them. But again, another depth piece for the Diamondbacks to add back. So a few roster moves that I wanted to touch on before we talk about the rest of the Padres series and what is to come, because this Padres team has struggled mightily. And I want to talk about a little bit, because I didn't get to talk about them coming into the series, about what really the Diamondbacks are getting into and for the rest of this series. But like I mentioned before, the perfect time for the Diamondbacks to be playing the Padres. They enter the series really looking for answers before a win against the Dodgers to close that series. Coming into the series, they lost 8 straight before avoiding a 4-game sweep against the Dodgers. They were previously swept by the Cubs, then shut out, of course, yesterday, 8-0 by Arizona in the opener. The offense has been inconsistent despite featuring stars like Fernando Tatis Jr., Manny Machado. I saw someone mention it on Twitter. I believe it was Jack Summers, about how Mike Hazen has definitely made his questionable amount of moves over the year, trades, signings, call-ups, whatever the case is. But they certainly have not been as bad as A.J. Preller, Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, Jake Cronenworth, all of these mega contracts that they're now signed to and have to deal with for over the course of a lot of years. Signing Xander Bogaerts to an 11-year deal was definitely not the best deal ever. And then you have to deal with Jake Cronenworth, and Manny Machado is definitely not up for a long time now. Joe Musgrove hasn't really pitched all that much for them. A lot of different deals that have not gone A.J. Preller's way, and that's on top of trading away nearly every prospect that they've ever had. Just off the top of my head, of course, in the Juan Soto deal, James Wood, Mackenzie Gore, Trey Turner used to be a Diamondback. They've had plenty of guys that have not worked out too well, but for the for the Padres in particular, injuries have hit them hard. Nick Pivetta, Yu Darvish, Joe Musgrove, Lucas Giolito, Griffin Canning, Randy Vasquez, and then Walker Buehler had been good up until that point against the Diamondbacks, but his 3.81 ERA goes to 5.07. So definitely an opportunity for the Diamondbacks to get back on track. You don't want to look at this series and say that should be a sweep, but definitely an opportunity to give them to start to stack wins going into the next series against the Dodgers. And then you have the All-Star break, and then you have the Cardinals right after that. The Diamondbacks should hope to want to position themselves as good as possible for the trade deadline, give themselves some optimism that if they do make a deal, that this team can turn it around with all the injuries they do have returning, which should give some excitement to Diamondbacks fans. But thank you guys again for watching Locked On Diamondbacks. Subscribe down below. Follow me at Gelon Media on X. Hope you guys enjoy. Hope you guys are enjoying these shows so far. Got a lot of draft stuff I want to talk about this week with the draft upcoming this weekend. Do want to touch on Merrill Kelly's start. I know I said I would talk about that in today's episode, but a lot of other news just came along, especially in this Padres game that I wanted to talk about. So I will talk about Merrill Kelly before his next start that he's going to make this series, but excited for that one. But thank you for making Locked On your first listen every day. For your second listen, find the all night Locked On MLB game night, every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. Get local analysis on the national scale. Find MLB game night on Locked On MLB YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Thank you guys again.